Who doesn't spend money won't get rich. That's the statement, and it hurts because it shatters the one rule most were taught as gospel: save, preserve, protect. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Money that sits still doesn't multiply. It decays, inflation erodes it, opportunity passes it by, and while the careful are busy guarding their pile, the bold are out there purchasing the invisible assets that actually build wealth: capability, position, leverage, time, and sovereignty. The question isn't whether spending is risky. The question is whether staying still is riskier. Machiavelli understood something 5 centuries ago that most still refuse to accept. Fortune herself, does not favor the hesitant. She rewards those who prepare the ground, who invest in alliances, who sharpen their tools before the battle begins. The prince who hoards his gold in the treasury loses to the prince who spends it on soldiers, spies, and strategic marriages. Translate that into the present. The person who refuses to invest in themselves, in their skills, in their network, in their systems, that person is not being careful. They're being reckless with their future. Before we go further, if this resonates with you, consider subscribing to this channel and turning on notifications. Every week, we explore the hidden mechanics of power, wealth, and psychology. Practical frameworks you can apply immediately. There's a pinned comment below with a roadmap of where to start, depending on where you are right now. This isn't theory, it's a toolkit. And the next video builds directly on this one. Now back to the core tension. There's a scene that plays out in millions of lives, and it looks like this. Someone finally has a little extra money. Not a windfall, just $1,000, maybe $2. And immediately the old voice kicks in: save it. Don't waste it. You never know when you'll need it. So it goes into an account. It sits. It earns a fraction of a percent. And 5 years later, it's still sitting there. Worth less in real terms than the day it was deposited, while the opportunities it could have unlocked have long since passed. Here's the other version of that scene. Same person, same $1,000, but this time they spend it on a course that teaches them how to sell. Or they hire someone to design a landing page that converts. Or they buy a ticket to a conference where the right conversation changes the trajectory of their career. 5 years later, that $1,000 has returned 10 times over. Not because of luck, but because it was deployed with intention. The difference between these two scenes isn't luck. It's not privilege. It's a shift in how money is understood. One person treats money as a trophy, something to accumulate and admire. The other treats it as ammunition, something to load and fire at the right target. Think of money as water. If you dam it up, it stagnates. It breeds nothing. But if you channel it with purpose, it carves canyons, it irrigates fields, it generates power. The same liquid, 2 entirely different outcomes depending on whether it's held or directed. That's the first principle. Stillness is decay, motion is growth, and the price of motion is spending with intent. Let's be precise about what the rich actually spend on, because this isn't about consumption. It's not about cars, clothes, or status signals. Those are distractions. The real game is invisible. The wealthy systematically purchase 5 assets that compound over time, and every dollar directed toward these assets is a vote for sovereignty. The first asset is capability. The market does not pay for effort. It pays for usefulness at scale. A person can work 16-hour days and remain broke if what they're doing isn't valuable to others. Capability is the bridge between effort and income. It's the skill that makes someone dangerous in their field. And here's the part that stings. Free information is abundant, but it's also slow. Paid information is expensive, but it compresses years into months. The person who spends $1,000 on a program that teaches them copywriting, negotiation, or investing isn't buying content. They're buying speed. And speed is the only non-renewable resource in the wealth equation. Most people refuse this trade. They say, I can learn that on YouTube, and they're right, they can. But it'll take them 3 years of trial and error, and by the time they've figured it out, the market has moved. Meanwhile, the person who paid for clarity is already earning from it. That's not unfair. That's just the cost of acceleration. The second asset is position. Who you stand next to matters more than how hard you work in isolation. Rooms are filters. Price is one of the gates that separates signal from noise, intent from pastime, commitment from curiosity. A dinner that costs $2,000 sounds absurd, until that dinner puts you in proximity to someone who opens a door worth 200,000. That's not magic. That's the mechanics of access. The poor grind in the shadows and hope to be discovered. The rich pay to be in the room where decisions are made. And once they're in that room, visibility does the rest. So it's not about impressing people. It's about being present when opportunity is distributed. Proximity is a multiplier, and it's always expensive by design. That's how the filter works. The water is flowing now, from stillness to motion, from hoard to deploy. And every dollar spent on capability and position is a channel carved deeper, redirecting the current toward power instead of stagnation. The third asset is leverage. A person who insists on doing everything themselves to save money is not being frugal. They're being foolish. Delegation, tools, and systems are the silent army that keeps marching while you sleep. Every task you do that someone else could do for less than your hourly value is a tax on your potential. Leverage is how you escape the trap of trading time for money. It's the difference between a worker chained to the wheel and a builder who moves pieces from the balcony. Here's the shift. When you hire someone to handle customer service, you're not spending money, you're buying back attention. And that attention can now be redirected toward the one activity that actually moves the needle. The person who refuses to delegate because it costs too much ends up spending their entire life on tasks worth $10 an hour while opportunities worth $1,000 an hour slip past, unnoticed. The fourth asset is time. The fast see more. They fail faster, iterate faster, recover faster, and eventually succeed faster. The slow get trapped in a fog of their own hesitation, and by the time they're ready to move, the window has closed. Acceleration is not recklessness. It's the art of removing friction with money. A consultant who charges $5,000 for a single session isn't selling advice. They're selling 5 years of detours you won't have to take. A software tool that costs $200 a month isn't an expense. It's the automation of drudgery that was stealing 3 hours of your day. Time is the throne, and the wealthy buy it aggressively because they understand that years cannot be earned back. Every hour wasted is gone forever. Every hour reclaimed through strategic spending is a permanent addition to the productive life. The fifth asset is substitution. Single points of failure make courage fragile. Redundancy makes it calm. The person who depends on one client, one supplier, one platform, one skill, they live in constant anxiety. And when that one thing collapses, so do they. Substitution is sovereignty. It's the capacity to replace anything that breaks without panic, because you built the backup before the fire started. Spend to create options. 2 suppliers instead of 1. A list you own instead of dependency on a platform. Multiple streams of revenue instead of a single paycheck. It's expensive to build redundancy, but it's catastrophic to discover you needed it only after it's too late. The water is carving canyons now. Capability sharpens the blade. Position opens the gate. Leverage multiplies the force. Time compresses the distance. Substitution secures the retreat. Every channel carved with intention, every dollar deployed toward one of these 5, is a step closer to sovereignty. The dam is broken. The current is yours to direct. Now let's confront the shadow side of this because it's real. There's a voice that rises up when this framework is presented, and it says, "But what if I spend and it doesn't work? What if I waste it? What if I lose everything?" That voice is not wisdom. That voice is the internalized fear of every authority figure who taught you to stay small, stay safe, stay employed. It's the voice of the collective unconscious whispering that risk is sin and security is virtue. But security is a mirage. The safe path is the one where inflation eats your savings, where your skills become obsolete, where you trade 40 years of obedience for a pension that barely covers rent. Jung would call this the tyranny of the persona, the mask you wear to fit in, to avoid judgment, to stay acceptable. The persona wants you to save, to hoard, to protect, because that's what responsible people do. But beneath the persona is the self, the sovereign center, and the self knows the truth. Growth requires risk. Transformation requires sacrifice. And fortune does not negotiate with the fearful. The person who spends with intent is not being reckless. They're being strategic. They're asking, will this make me stronger? And if the answer is yes, the price becomes irrelevant. $1,000 spent on a skill that increases earning power by $10,000 annually is not a cost. It's a bargain. The $5,000 investment in a mastermind that accelerates learning by 2 years is not extravagant, it's efficient. Here's the reframe. Spending is not the enemy. Ignorance is. Consumption to numb discomfort is drift. Investment to increase capacity is command. The poor move money with emotion. The rich move it with intention. And intention is the hand that turns currency into control. If you're finding value in this, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to share this with others who need it. And drop a comment below. What's one capability you've been hesitating to invest in? Sometimes naming it is the first step toward claiming it. Let's make this concrete. Imagine 2 people, same age, same starting income. Person A saves aggressively. Every bonus, every tax return, straight into the bank. Person B spends strategically. Every bonus goes into learning, into tools, into access. 5 years pass. Person A has $20,000 in the bank. It's earning 2% interest, barely keeping pace with inflation. Their skills are the same as they were 5 years ago. Their network is the same. Their income is the same, adjusted slightly for cost of living. They feel responsible. They feel safe. But they're standing in the exact same place they were 5 years ago, just older. Person B has less in the bank, maybe $5,000, but they've spent $15,000 on education, on software, on hiring help, on getting into rooms. Their skills are sharp. Their network is deep. Their income has tripled. They've built leverage. They've compressed time. And now with their increased capacity, they can save more in a single year than Person A saved in 5. The gap isn't closing, it's widening. And it widens because one person treated money as a tool and the other treated it as a trophy. This is the Machiavellian insight. Power does not accumulate in the hands of the cautious. It flows to those who prepare the ground and pay the toll. Fortuna visits the prince who risks resources with purpose, not the subject who counts coins in the dark. Here's the practical pivot. If $1,000 appears, ask one question. Will this make me stronger in the long run? Not happier for a weekend. Stronger. Strength is compound interest. It's the accumulated result of purchases that made capability increase, position improve, leverage expand, time compress, and substitutions secure. Strength is not a mood, it's a structure. And structures are built with intentional spending. The water is no longer carving, it's generating. The channels are deep. The current is fast. The power is real. And the person who directed the flow is no longer at the mercy of the river. They command it. Let's address the other side of this equation, what not to spend on, because not all spending is equal. Buying a new phone to impress strangers is theater. Buying a course that teaches high-income skills is strategy. Upgrading a car to feel successful is escapism. Hiring a coach who shortens the learning curve by 3 years is warfare. The difference is intent. The gambler throws money at chaos and hopes for a miracle. The strategist directs money with precision and refuses battles that don't change the war. One is emotional, the other is surgical. And the market rewards the surgeon, not the gambler. Here's the filter. Does this purchase increase my capacity, improve my position, build my leverage, compress my timeline, or create substitution? If yes, it's an investment. If no, it's a distraction. Most spending fails this test. The coffee, the subscription no one uses, the convenience that costs twice what discipline would cost, it's all leakage. And leakage is how the average person stays average. But here's the twist. Even disciplined savers leak. They leak through opportunity cost. Every dollar that sits idle is a dollar not working. And while they're protecting their pile, someone else is deploying that same dollar into capability that will out-earn, out-position, and out-leverage them within 2 years. The illusion of safety is the most expensive illusion of all because it costs what could have been. If this is landing, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next video in this series builds on these 5 assets and shows you exactly how to audit your spending and redirect it with precision. There's also a full guide in the pinned comment. Don't let this be just another video you watch and forget. Make it the turning point. Now let's talk about leverage in depth, because this is where most people hemorrhage potential. Imagine a founder who does everything: customer service, bookkeeping, content creation, email responses, scheduling. They're saving money by not hiring help. But here's the math. Their time is worth conservatively $200 an hour, if they focus on revenue-generating activities. They spend 15 hours a week on tasks that could be delegated for $20 an hour. That's a weekly loss of $2,700. Annually, that's $140,000 in unrealized income. They didn't save money, they incinerated potential. The person who hires an assistant for $1,500 a month buys back 60 hours. Those 60 hours, redirected towards strategy, sales, and partnerships, generate 10 times the cost of the assistant. The arithmetic isn't complicated. It's just uncomfortable because it requires trust, delegation, and the willingness to spend before seeing the return. Leverage changes the shape of days. It turns frantic into calm. It turns overwhelmed into focused. And focus is where fortunes are built, because focus is the scalpel that cuts through noise and isolates the one move that matters. Here's the image. A general who fights on the front line is not brave. He's foolish. A general who commands from the hill, deploying troops with precision, wins wars. Delegation is how you become the general, and the cost of delegation is always less than the cost of remaining a soldier. The water is now a reservoir. The channels have been carved. The dam is controlled, and the power generated lights entire cities. That's the destination, not wealth for its own sake, but sovereignty over time, choice, and direction. And sovereignty is purchased, one intentional dollar at a time. Let's go deeper into position because this is the most misunderstood asset. Most people think success is about working harder than everyone else. But hard work in isolation is invisible. The market doesn't reward effort. It rewards perceived value. And perceived value is shaped by context. A brilliant idea pitched in the wrong room is ignored. The same idea presented in the right room to the right person becomes a funded venture. The idea didn't change. The room did. Position is about proximity. It's about being in the room where decisions are made, where capital is allocated, where partnerships are formed. And rooms are gated by price, status, proof, or network. Most people can't shortcut status or proof early on, but they can pay for access. That's what conferences, masterminds, and high-ticket coaching are actually selling. Not information, but proximity. A $10,000 mastermind sounds outrageous until you realize it puts you in a room with 50 people who are already where you want to be. One conversation in that room can unlock a partnership, a referral, a strategy, or a mindset shift that changes the trajectory of a decade. That's not luck. That's the designed outcome of paying for position. The mistake most people make is thinking they'll earn the position first, then join the room. But it doesn't work that way. The room is what accelerates the earning. Waiting to be ready is a trap. The room makes you ready, and the price of entry is the filter that ensures everyone inside is serious. Save this video to your playlist if you want to come back to it. A lot of people watch this once and feel the shift, but it's in the second or third watch that the deeper layers click. Make this a reference point, not just a moment. Time is the final throne, and here's why. Every other resource can be replenished. Money can be re-earned. Skills can be relearned. Relationships can be rebuilt. But time is the only asset that flows in one direction. Once spent, it's gone. And the person who treats time as infinite will wake up at 50 with regrets, while the person who treats it as sacred will wake up at 50 with options. The rich don't buy things. They buy time. They automate, they delegate, they hire. They pay for shortcuts, they skip lines, they compress learning, they remove friction. All of it is expensive. All of it is worth it. Because the alternative is spending decades on a path that someone else already mapped, already tested, already optimized, and choosing to ignore their map out of pride or cheapness. A consultant who charges $10,000 for a day isn't selling hours. They're selling the distilled result of 10,000 hours. That exchange is asymmetrical. You pay for one day. You receive a decade. And if that decade of compressed learning allows you to avoid even one major mistake, the return is incalculable. Most people balk at this because they can't see the future. They can't quantify what they're avoiding. But the strategist doesn't need to see it. They trust the pattern. The pattern is this: speed wins. The fast fail faster, learn faster, iterate faster, and eventually dominate faster. And speed is purchased with money, not earned with time. If this has shifted how you see spending, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And comment below. What's one expense you've been justifying that you now realize is leakage? Naming it creates accountability. Substitution is the cold art of becoming irreplaceable by replacing everything else. The person who depends on one income stream lives in fear. The person who has 3 income streams sleeps well. The person who has 5 income streams moves boldly because they know that losing one doesn't end the game. Substitution isn't paranoia, it's pragmatism. Build 2 bridges for every river, 2 suppliers for every product, 2 skills for every role, 2 channels for every audience. It's expensive to build redundancy. But when the storm comes, and it always comes, the person with options pivots without panic, while the person with a single point of failure collapses. Machiavelli would say, "A prince who depends on one ally never sleeps soundly. The prince who can replace any ally at will sleeps deeply and strikes decisively at dawn." Translate that into business, career, relationships. Dependency is fragility. Options are strength, and options are purchased with intentional spending before the crisis, not during it. Here's the move. Every quarter, identify one dependency. Then spend to eliminate it. Dependent on one client? Spend to acquire 2 more. Dependent on one platform? Spend to build a list you own. Dependent on one skill? Spend to learn a second. This isn't paranoia. This is sovereignty. The water has become a system. The channels are redundant. The flow is controlled. The power is distributed. And the person who built this system is no longer vulnerable to a single failure. That's the architecture of wealth. Not a tower built on one pillar, but a network built on many. Now let's address the guilt. Because when this framework is presented, a certain kind of person feels tension. They were raised to believe that spending on oneself is selfish, that investing in one's own growth is arrogant, that the responsible thing to do is sacrifice, save, and serve others first. And this belief, however well-intentioned, is a trap. Jung called this the shadow of the collective, the internalized voice of the group that demands conformity, that punishes ambition, that shames differentiation. The collective wants you to stay small because your growth threatens the equilibrium. But the self, the sovereign center of the psyche, knows the truth. You cannot serve from an empty vessel. You cannot lead from a position of weakness, and you cannot give what you do not have. The person who invests in their own capability, position, leverage, time, and substitution is not being selfish, they're being strategic. Because the stronger they become, the more they can offer. The wealthier they become, the more they can give. The freer they become, the more they can serve. But strength comes first. Freedom comes first. Wealth comes first. And all 3 are purchased with intentional spending. If the guilt persists, ask this: who benefits from you staying weak? Who profits from your hesitation? Not you, not the people you love. Only the systems that depend on your compliance. Break the guilt. Redirect the dollars. Build the strength. The final call: choose one capability to invest in this week, 1 room to enter this month, 1 task to delegate today, 1 hour to reclaim with a tool, and 1 dependency to replace this quarter. Write it down. Make it real, because fortune does not finance the hesitant, only the prepared. Here's the summation. Money in motion builds momentum. Momentum attracts opportunity. Seized opportunity concentrates power. Power redeems time. Redeemed time expands vision. Expanded vision finds better uses of money. The flywheel turns only when pushed with intentional spending. The goal was never to have money. The goal is to control what money buys: capability, position, leverage, time, substitution, and through them, sovereignty over hours and horizon. Stop worshipping money. Command it. Stop protecting piles. Deploy troops. Stop asking permission to risk. Ask instead for the clearest path to capability and control. Every purchase is a vote for the life to be lived. Distraction votes mediocrity. Knowledge votes dominance. And those who appear lucky simply prepaid for fortune before others notice the window. The price of success is paid in advance with strategic spending. The price of failure is collected in arrears with interest, through lost time, lost options, and lifelong obedience to those who did pay. Spend and get rich is not a slogan. It's a covenant with reality. Spend to become more dangerous. Spend to stand closer to power. Spend to multiply. Spend to compress time. Spend to replace fragility with options. Everything else is noise. The water is yours now. The channels are carved. The power is online. And the only question left is this: will you direct the flow or will you let it stagnate? The choice, as always, was never about the money. It was about the willingness to move, There's a temptation, after all this talk of movement, channels, and control, to retreat back into comfort, to tell yourself, maybe next month, maybe after I read one more book, maybe after my income goes up. But the river waits for nobody. The world rewards those who act, not those who endlessly prepare to act. Take a simple, actionable step today. Audit your last month's spending. Not with guilt, but with curiosity. Which purchases built skill or network? Which ones were leakage? List 3 moments where money sat idle. A subscription you didn't use, a course you wanted but didn't buy. An event you skipped because the ticket felt unnecessary. Write them down. The act of clarity reframes paralysis into motion. Let's revisit the metaphor. The water. Most let their river spill pointlessly, feeding neither crops nor turbines. A few become engineers, shaping each bend, accelerating the flow, storing power for moments of strategic release. That's how abundance is cultivated, not through random risk, but through structural intention. Think about communities too. Those who build together leverage pooled resources. The mastermind group that meets monthly, each member investing in their own growth, sharing connections, opening doors for each other. When one rises, all rise. Your assets network just as you do. Capital finds capital, and collaborative spending, funding group mentorship or shared tools, returns multiples in collective elevation. Pause now and ask yourself, which channel of my life is most stagnant? Where have I confused safety with stuckness? Sometimes the answer is glaring, a role you've outgrown, a market that's dried up, a skill that's lost value. Other times it's subtle, the routine, the complacency, the inertia that camouflages itself as discipline. Push against that boundary. Invest in disruption, not reckless gambling, but conscious redirection. If your routine is static, buy a ticket somewhere new. If your circle is closed, invest in access to broader minds. If your skill feels dated, pay for a course taught by someone on the cutting edge. Money spent here is not loss. It is the toll paid for a crossing into larger territory, and don't wait for permission. The psyche resists transformation until tension becomes unbearable. But the mature mind moves at the first signal, not the last crisis. Jung called this individuation, the journey from inherited patterns to self-directed shape. Spending aimed at individuation is spending that generates authentic power. You become the architect of your time, your capabilities, your opportunities. Let's weave the water image one last time. Imagine looking over your life as an aerial map. Channels branching into fields, reservoirs feeding turbines, every purchase a new course cut into the landscape. The map was once blank. Every act of strategic spending carved a path. You don't control the rain, but you absolutely control the way it's directed. If this video has sparked the urge to act, let the impulse become a commitment. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you're not only consuming ideas but joining a community of movers. People applying these principles, transforming stillness into strength week by week. Returning here means returning to the current, never letting it settle, and leave a comment below. Where will your next dollar flow? What channel are you carving next? Share your move, teach, inspire, and hold yourself accountable. Your declaration is the first step in a campaign that fortune herself cannot ignore. The closing line: money does not make you rich, motion does. The price of success is always paid in advance, and if you choose the right channels, the river becomes a reservoir, the current becomes a force, and the power finally becomes yours to shape.